Welcome back, boys. So this is the 5th lesson of chapter 9, and it talks about the discriminant. Okay, so this lesson is extremely easy. You are not solving for anything. You are not giving me x equals. Your answers actually are going to be words. Okay, so it's super easy. So let's get started. So interpreting the discriminant. So the expression So the expression, this right here, b squared minus 4ac, is the inside of the quadratic formula. Okay, so that is what's underneath the radical, and that is what is referred to as the discriminant. Okay, and the discriminant is very important. It actually, to use a word within the word, it discriminates against the number of answers that you will get. Okay, so the number of real solutions is the same as the number of x-intercepts. And because it's underneath the radical, you could have your 2 answers, you could have your 1 answer, or you could have no answer. So by just doing what's underneath the radical, which is the discriminant, you will know exactly how many answers. So for this lesson, I don't want to know what the answers are. I just want to know how many there are. Okay, so again, extremely easy. And then in a future lesson, I'm going to actually talk about this whole quadratic formula and kind of put some other things that you learned before in other chapters all together. So these 2 chapters have been relating, and then they also relate to a previous chapter. All right, so these are some pictures you have seen before. If you look at the first one, you have an open parabola, which means A was positive. And as you can see, it crossed your x-axis twice, which means you have your 2 real solutions, which means you have 2 x-intercepts. Now, and that happens when your discriminant is a number that's bigger than 0. Okay? Now, the middle picture has just 1 real solution because it only touches your x-axis once. So it means it only has 1 x-intercept. And that is when your discriminant equals 0. Okay, because if you remember, the square root of 0 is just 0. And then obviously you have a floating parabola, like I referred to it, is when it does not touch your x-axis, which means there are no real solutions and then no x-intercepts. And also, if you look at the top thing right here, your discriminant would obviously be a negative number, and you cannot do the square root of a negative number. Now, to talk about what it means to be a real solution is a number that we know. A whole number, a fraction, a decimal, any number that we know. So if it's not real, then it's imaginary. So that's what it means to be no real solution. That's an imaginary. So that's something you will learn in Algebra 2. So there is an answer. It's just not part of the real numbers that we both know. Okay? So let's get started. Again, super easy. So you're going to determine the number of real solutions of that equation. So you are not solving these. Okay, you are not solving. So first thing we should do is we can write down our discriminant. And then we, like we had before with our quadratic formula, we should write down our A, B, and C. So A is 1, B is 8, C is -3. And also, just to make a note, must be in standard form. Okay, and that is the same rule that applied when you did the quadratic formula. Okay, so this is the only thing that you're looking at. You're not writing down the quadratic formula. So B is 8. So we're just going to plug in our numbers. So 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times -3. So we get what? 64. And then we're going to multiply these. And a negative times a negative is a positive. So you would get a positive 12. Looks like your discriminant is 76. So this is the discriminant. Okay, it's 76. So because that is a number that is greater than 0, the equation has two real solutions. So what you are boxing is this. Okay, so again, let me just go over this. So you plugged in your numbers, you got the discriminant of 76, but because the discriminant was greater than 0, if you look back at your lovely pictures, it crossed the x-axis twice somewhere. I don't know where, nor do I care. And it means that you had two real solutions. Okay, so again, you're not solving these. All right, let's do another one. All right, so obviously not in standard form, so we're going to move this over. So 9x squared minus 6x plus 1 equals 0. Let's write down a, b, and c. So a is 9, b is -6, and c is 1. Write down our discriminant. Plug in our numbers. Okay. Keep going, following PEMDAS. And obviously, when we combine those, we get 36. Oh, looks like we get 0. So this is the discriminant. Okay, so since the discriminant is 0, if you looked back at your graphs, then the equation has one real solution. So it's only going to touch your x-axis once. Okay? So obviously you can probably guess what the answer is to my third example. It's the one we haven't done yet. So let's look at this one. So obviously not in standard form. So let's move this over. And that will be a positive 1. So A, B, and C. So we got 6, 2, and 1. There's our discriminant. Let's plug in our numbers. So 2 squared minus 4 times 6 times 1. So that's 4 minus. Now if we multiply that, it looks like, what is it, 24. So -20. So this is our discriminant. So since the discriminant is less than 0, obviously, the equation has no real solution. So it's going to be that floating parabola that you saw that will not touch your x-axis anywhere. Okay? Now, my last two examples are the same thing, but they're worded differently. And they want you to find the number of x-intercepts of the parabola. So pretty much it's the same thing. You're just writing 2 x-intercepts, 1 x-intercepts, or no x-intercepts. Okay? So here we go. So find the number of x-intercepts of this graph. So first step is find the discriminant. Okay, so we got A 2, B is 3, C is 9. So there's our discriminant. So let's plug in our numbers. We got 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times 9. So it's 9 minus, that's going to be 8 times 9, which is 72, which equals 63. So this is our discriminant. Now, step 2 will be to determine number of solutions. So, as you just did, because our discriminant is a negative, we're going to have no real solutions, which means the graph has no x-intercepts. Okay, so you're just using different words. Okay, so before you were writing no real solutions. Well, now for x-intercepts, well, it doesn't have any, so you just write the graph has no x-intercepts. Okay, let's do one more. Find the number of x-intercepts of the graph that, okay, so we got A is 2, B is -4, C is -3. So, same steps, find the discriminant. So let's plug this in. So we got -4 squared minus 4 times 2 times -3 gives you 16. Now be very careful. I'm going to multiply these, and I'm going to get a positive 24, which coincidentally, if I add this, I get 40. So since the discriminant is greater than 0, the solution has the equation has 2 real solutions. So obviously the graph has 2 x-intercepts. Okay, so the only words you need to write are these blue words. You don't need to write the red words. I'm just trying to show you that they mean the same thing. It's just, if you were graphing, you're talking about x-intercepts. If you were solving, you were talking about the word solutions. Okay? All right, so go ahead and work on the worksheet. Extremely easy. Please do not solve. See you next time, boys.